He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Broadfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence, until suddenly, after several deep breaths, Avery Baggins, Bofian Took, Randybuck, Crab, Chubb, Burrows, Bulger, Brace Griddle, Brackhouse, Godbody, Horn, Hornblower, and Broadfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the joke was in very bad taste, and more food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. "He's mad. I always said so," was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks, with a few exceptions, though Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than a ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandybuck was not so sure. Neither age or an enormous dinner had clouded his wits, and he said to his daughter-in-law, Esmeralda, "There is something fishy in this, my dear. I believe that Mad Baggins is off again. Silly and old fool. But why worry? He hasn't taken the victuals with him." He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine round again. Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing. For some time he had sat silent beside Bilbo's empty chair, and ignored all remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty in keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests, but at the same time he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking and discussing Bilbo Baggins' oddities, past and present, but the Sackville Bagginses had already departed in wrath. Frodo did not want to have any more to do with the party. He gave orders for more wine to be served. Then he got up and drained his own glass silently to the health of Bilbo, and slipped out of the pavilion. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket, his magic ring that he had kept secret for so many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his finger, and he was never seen by any hobbit in Hobbiton again. He walked briskly back to his hall, and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din in the pavilion, and to the sound of merrymaking in other parts of the field. Then he went in. He took off his party clothes, folded up and wrapped in tissue paper his embroidered silk waistcoat, and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old antidy garments, and fastened round his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword in a battered black leather scabbard. From a locked drawer, smearing of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been looked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that the original color could hardly be guessed. It might have been dark green. They were rather too large for him. He then went into his study, and from a large strong books took out a bundle wrapped in old clothes, and a leather-bound manuscript, and also a large bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of a heavy bag that was standing there, already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and its fine chain, and then sealed it and addressed it to Frodo. At first, he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment, the door opened and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wonder if you would turn up." "I'm glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly, and according to plan." "Yes, I do," said Bilbo, though that flash was surprising. It quite startled me, let alone the others. "A little addition of your own, I suppose." "It was. You have wisely kept that ring secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to explain your sudden vanishment, and would spoil my joke. You are an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo. "But I expect you know best as usual." "I do, when I know anything, but I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now one it has now come to the final point. You have had your joke, and alarmed or offended most of your relations, and given the whole shire something to talk about for 9 days, or 99 more likely. Are you going in further?" "Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday, a very long holiday, as I have told you before, probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to. They have made all arrangements. I am old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretches, if you know that what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change, or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. "No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "Not after all. I believe your plan is probably the best. Well, I have made up my mind. Anyway, I want to see mountains again, Gandalf Mountains, and then find somewhere where I can rest in peace and quiet without a lot of relatives prying around, and a string of confound visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I have thought of a nice ending for it." And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days. Gandalf laughed. "I hope he will, but nobody will read the book, however it ends." "Oh, they may. In years to come. Frodo has read some already, as far as it has gone. You will keep an eye on Frodo, won't you?" "Yes, I will. 2 eyes, as often as I can spare them." He would come with me, of course, if I asked him. In fact, he offered to once, just before the party, but he does not really want to, yet. I want to see the Wild Country again before I die, and the mountains, but he is still in love with the Shire, with woods and fields and little rivers. He ought to be comfortable here. I am leaving everything to him, of course, except a few oddments. I hope he will be happy when he gets used to being on his own. It's time. He was his own master now. "Everything," said Gandalf, "the ring as well. You agreed to that, you remember." "Well, yes, I suppose so," stammered Bilbo. "Where is it?" "In an envelope, if you must know," said Bilbo impatiently. "There on the mantelpiece." "Well, no, no. Here it is in my pocket. He hesitated. Isn't that odd now? He said softly to himself. Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay here? Gandalf looked again and very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes and no. Now it comes to it. I don't like parting with it at all, I may say, and I don't really see why I should. Why do you want me to? You want me to? He asked, and a curious change came over his voice. It was sharp, with suspicions and annoyance. You are always badgering about me about my ring, but you have never bothered me about the other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth. It was important. Magic rings are well magical, and they are rare and curious. I was professionally interested in your ring, you may say, and I am. I should like to know where it is, if you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had it quite long enough. You won't need it anymore, Bilbo, unless I am quite mistaken. Bilbo flashed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours? Anyway, to know what I do with my own things. It is my own, and I found it. It came to me. Yes, yes, said Gandalf, but there is no need to get angry. If I am, it is your fault, said Bilbo. It is mine, I tell you, my own, my precious. Yes, my precious. The wizard's face remained grave and attentive, and only a flicker in his deep eyes showed that he was startled and indeed alarmed. It has been called that before, he said, but not by you. But I say it now, and why not? Even Gollum said the same once. It is not his no, but mine, and I shall keep it, I say. Gandalf stood up. He spoke sternly. You will be a fool if you do, Bilbo, he said. You make that clearer with every word you say. It has got far too much hold on you. Let it go, and then you can go yourself and be free. I will do so as I will do as I choose, and go as I please, said Bilbo obstinately. obstinately. No, no, my dear hobbit, said Gandalf. All your long life we have been friends, and you owe me something. Come, do as you promised, give it up. Well, if you want my ring yourself, say so, cried Bilbo. But you won't get it. I won't give my precious away, I tell you. His hand started to the hilt of his small sword, straight. Gandalf's eyes flashed. It will be my turn to get angry soon, he said. If you say that again, I shall. Then you will see Gandalf the Grey unlocked. He took a step towards the hobbit, and he seemed to grow tall and menacing. His shadow filled the little room. Bilbo backed away to the wall, breathing hard, his hand clutching at his pockets. They stood for a while facing one another, and the air of the room tingled. Gandalf's eyes remained bent on the hobbit. Slowly his hand relaxed, and he began to tremble. I don't know what has come over you, said Gandalf, he said. You have never been like this before. What is it all about? It is mine, isn't it? I found it, and Gollum would have killed me if I hadn't kept it. I'm not a thief, whatever he said. I have never called you one, Gandalf answered, and I am not one either. I'm not trying to rob you, but to help you. I wish you would trust me, as you used. He turned away, and the shadow passed. He seemed to dwindle again to an old grey man, bent and troubled. Bilbo drew his hands over his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I felt so care, and yet it would be a relief in a way not to be bothered with it any more. It has been so growing on my mind lately. Sometimes I have felt it was more. It has been it was like an eye looking at me, and I am always wanting to put it on a disappear, don't you know, or wondering if it is safe, and pulling it out, it makes sure. I tried looking it up, but I found I couldn't rest without it in my pocket. I don't know why, and I don't seem able to make up my mind. Trust, then trust mine, said Gandalf. It is quite made up. Go away and leave it behind. Stop possessing it. Give it to Frodo, and I will look after him. Bilbo stood for a moment, tense and undecided. Presently he sighed. All right, he said with a new thought. I will. Then he shrugged his shoulders and smiled rather ruefully. After all, that's what this party business was all about, really. To give away lots of birthday presents and somehow make it easier to give it away at the same time. It hasn't made it any easier in the end, but it would be a pity to waste all my preparations. It would it would quite spoil the joke. Indeed, it would take away the only point I ever saw in the affair, said Gandalf. Very well, said Bilbo. It goes to Frodo with all the rest. He drew a deep breath, and now I really must be starting, or somebody else will catch me. I have said goodbye, and I couldn't bear to do it all over again. He picked up his bag and moved to the door. You have still got the ring in your pocket, said the wizard. Well, so I have, cried Bilbo, and my will and all the other documents too. You had better take it and deliver it for me. That will be safest. No, don't give the ring to me, said Gandalf. Put it on the mantelpiece. It will be safe enough there. Till Frodo comes, I shall wait for him. Bilbo took out the envelope, but just as he was about to set it by the cloak, his hand jerked back, and the package fell on the floor. Before he could pick it up, the wizard stopped and seized it, and set it in its place. A spasm of anger passed swiftly over the hobbit's face again. Suddenly, it gave way to a look of relief and a laugh. Well, that's that, he said. Now I am off. They went out into the ball. Bilbo chose his favorite stick from the stand. Then he whistled. Three dwarfs came out of different rooms where they had been busy. Is everything ready? Asked Bilbo. Everything packed and labeled. Everything, they answered. Well, let's start then. He stepped out of the front door. It was a fine night, and the black sky was dotted with stars. He looked up, sniffing the air. What fun! What fun to be off again, off on the road with dwarfs. This is what I have really been looking for years. Goodbye, he said, looking at his old home and bowing to the door. Goodbye, Gandalf. Goodbye for the present, Bilbo. Take care of yourself. You are old enough and perhaps wise enough. Take care. I don't care. Don't you worry about me. I'm so happy now and I have ever been, as I have ever been. And that is saying a great deal. But the time has come. I am being swept off my feet at last, he added. And then in a low voice, as if to himself, he sang softly in the dark. The road goes ever on and on, dwarf from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing with the eager feet, until he joins some larger way where many paths and errands meet, and whether then I cannot say. He paused, silent for a moment, then without another word he turned away from the lights and voices in the files and tents, and followed by his three companions went round into his garden, and trotted down the long, sloping path. He jumped over a low place in the hedge at the bottom of to the meadows, passing into the night like a rustle of wind in the grass. Gandalf remained for a while staring after him into the dark. "Goodbye, my dear Bilbo, until our next meeting," he said softly and went back indoors. Frodo came in soon afterwards and found him sitting in the dark, deep in thought. He has he gone? He asked. Yes, answered Gandalf. He has gone at last. I hope until his evening that it was only a joke, said Frodo. But I knew in my heart that he really meant to go. He always used to joke about serious things. I wish he had come back sooner, just to see him off. I think really prefers slipping off quietly in the end, said Gandalf. Don't be too troubled. He will be all right. Now he left a package for you. There it is. There it is. Frodo took the envelope from the mantelpiece and glanced at it, but did not open it. You will find his will and all the other documents in there, I think, said the wizard. Said the wizard. You are the master of back end now, and also I fancy you will find a golden ring. The ring, exclaimed Frodo. Has he left me that? I wonder why. Still, it might be useful. It may, and it may not, said Gandalf. I should not make sure of it, if I were you, but keep it secret and keep it safe. Now I am going to bed. As master of Bag End, Frodo felt it his painful duty to say goodbye to the guests. Rumors of strange events had by now spread all over the field, but Frodo would only say no doubt everything will be cleared up in the morning. About midnight carriages came from the important folk. One by one they rolled away, filled with full butts, very unsatisfied hobbits. Gardeners came by arrangement, and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently inadvertently remained behind. Night slowly passed. The sun rose, the hobbit rose, rather later morning went on. People came and began by orders to clear away the pavilion and the tables and the chairs and the spoons and knives and bottles and plates and lanterns and the flowering shrubs in boxes and the crumbs and cracked paper and the forgotten bags and the gloves and handkerchiefs and the garage and crisps and the uneaten food, a very small item. Then a number of other people came without orders, Bagginses and Boffins and Bulgars and Chooks and Goddard and other guests that lived or were staying near. By midday, when even the best feet were out and about again, there was a large crowd at Bag End, uninvited but not unexpected. Frodo was waiting on the steps, smiling, but looking rather tired and worried. He welcomed all the callers, but he had not much more to say than before. His reply to all inquiries was simply this: Mr. Bilbo Baggins has gone away, as far as I know, for good. Some of the visitors invited to come inside, as Bilbo had left messages for them. Inside in the hall there was piled a large assortment of packages and parcels and small articles of fortunate furniture. On every item there was a label tied There were several labels of this sort, for Adler took, for his very own, from Bilbo, on an umbrella Adelard had created of many unlabeled ones. For Dora Baggins, in memory of a long correspondence with love from Bilbo, on a large waste paper basket. Dora was Drogo's sister, and the eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. For Milmo Burrows, hoping it will be useful from Point B on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milmo never answered letters. For use, Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo on a round canvas mirror, she was a young Baggins, and too obviously considered her face shapely. For the collection of Hugo Brand's brass girdle from a contributor on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books and worse than usual at returning them. For Lobelia Sackville Baggins as a present on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey. Lobelia knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day, she took the points at once, but she also took the spoons. This is only a small selection of the assembled presents. Bilbo's residence had got rather cluttered up with things in the course of his long life. It was tendency of hobbit halls to get cluttered up, for which the custom of giving so many birthday presents was largely responsible. Not, of course, that the birthday presents were always new. There were one or two old mathoms of forgotten years that had circulated all around the district, but Bilbo had usually given new presents and kept those that he received. The old hall was now being cleared a little. Every one of the various parting gifts had labels written out personally by Bilbo, and several had some point or some joke. But of course, most of the things were given where they would be wanted and welcome. The poorer hobbits, and especially those of Back Row, did very well. Old Gaffer Gamagee got 2 sacks of potatoes, a new spade, a woolen waistcoat, and a bottle of ointment for creaking joints, all Roy Barandibak, in return for much hospitality, got a, got a dozen bottles of old Wynyards, a strong red wine from the South Forth Inn, and now quite mature, as it had been laid down by Bilbo's father. Rory quite forgave Bilbo, and voted him a capital fellow after the first battle. There was plenty of everything left for Frodo, and of course all the chief treasures, as well as the books, pictures, and more than enough fortunate, were left in his possession. There was, however, no sign nor mention of money or jewellery. Not a penny piece or a glass bead was given away. Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumor that whole household was being distributed with free spread like wildfire, and before long the place was packed with people who had no business there, but could not be kept out. Labels got torn off and mixed and quarrels broke out. Some people tried to do swap and deals in the hall, and others tried to make off with minor items not addressed to them, or with anything that seemed unwanted or unwatched. The road to the gates was blocked with burrows and hand carts. In the middle of the commotion, the Sackville Bagginses arrived. Frodo had retired for a while and left his friend Merry Brandybuck to keep an eye on things. When Oslo loudly demanded to see Frodo, Merry bowed politely. "He is indisposed," he said. "He is resting." "Hiding, you mean," said Lobelia. "Anyway, we want to see him and we mean to see him. Just go and tell him so." Mary left them alone with while in the hall, and they had time to discover their parting gifts of scones. It did not improve their timbers. Eventually, they were shown into the study. Frodo was sitting at the table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed to see Sackville Bagginses at any rate, and he stood up, fidgeting, fidgeting with something in his pocket. But he spoke quite politely. The Sackville Bagginses were rather offensive. They began by offering him bad bargain prices, as between friends, for various valuable and unlabeled things. When Frodo replied that only the things especially directed by Bilbo were being given away, they said the whole affair was very fishy. "Only one thing is clear to me," said Otto, "and that is that you are doing exceedingly well out of it. I insist on seeing the will." Otto would have been Bilbo's heir, but for the adoption of Frodo. He read the will carefully and snorted. It was unfortunately very clear and correct, according to the legal customs of hobbits, which demand, among other things, 7 signatures of witnesses in red ink. "Foil it again," he said to his wife, and after waiting 60 years, spoons, fiddlesticks, fiddlesticks, he snapped his finger under Frodo's nose and slumpered off. But Lobelia was not so easily got rid of. A little A little later, Frodo came out of the study to see how things were going on and found her still about the place, investing nooks and corners and taping the floors. He escorted her firmly off the premises after he had relieved her of several small, but rather valuable, articles that had somehow fallen inside her umbrella. Her face looked as if she was in the throes of thinking out a really crushing parting remark, but all she found to say, turning round on the step, was, You will live to regret it, young fellow. Why don't you go too? Why don't you go too? You don't belong here. You are no Baggins. You are a Brandybuck. Did you hear that, Mary? That was an insult, if you like, said Frodo as he shut the door on her. It was a compliment, said Mary. Brandybuck said so, of course not true. Then they went round the hall and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 buffins and a blogger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also has a castle with young Sancho Proudfoot, old Odo Proudfoot's grandson, who had begun an excavation in the later Pantry, where he thought there was an echo. The legend of Bilbo's gold excited both curiosity and hope, for legendary gold, mysteriously obtained, if not positively ill-gotten, as everyone knows, anyone's for the finding, unless the search is interrupted. When he had overcome Sancho and pushed him out, Frodo collapsed on a chair in the hall. "It is time to close the shop, Mary," he said. "Lock the door and don't open it to anyone today, not even if they bring a battering ram." Then he went to revive himself with a belated cup of tea. He had hardly sat down when there came a soft knock at the front door. Lobelia again, most likely, he thought. She must have thought of something really nasty and have come back again to say it. It can't wait. He went on with his tea. The knock was repeated, much louder, but he took no notice. Suddenly the wizard's head appeared in the window. If you don't let me in, Frodo, I shall blow your door right down your hole and out through the hill, he said. My dear Gandalf, half a minute, cried Frodo, running out of the room to the door. Come in, come in. I thought it was Lobelia. Then I forgave you, but I saw her some time ago, driving a pony trap towards Bywater with a face that would have curdled with new milk. She had already nearly curdled me. Honestly, I nearly tried on Bilbo's ring. I longed to disappear. Don't do that, said Gandalf, sitting down. Do be careful of that ring, Frodo. In fact, it is partly about that I have come to say at last word. Well, what about it? What do you know already? Only what Bilbo told me. I've heard his story, how he found it, and how he used it on his journey, I mean. Which story, I wonder? Said Gandalf. Oh, no, what he told the dwarves and put in his book, said Frodo. He told me the true story soon after I came to live here. He said you had presented him till he told you. So I had better know too. I better know too. No secret between us, Frodo, he said. But they are not to go any farther. It's mine anyway. That's interesting, said Gandalf. Well, what did you think of it all? If you mean inventing all about a present, well, I thought the true story much more likely, and I couldn't see the point of altering it at all. It was very unlike Bilbo to do so. Anyway, and I thought it rather odd. So did I. But odd things may happen to people that have such treasures. If they use them, let it be a warning to you to be very careful with it. It may have other powers than just making you vanish when you wish to. I don't understand, said Frodo. Neither do I, answered the wizard. I have merely begun to wonder about the ring, especially since last night. No need to worry, but if you take my advice, you will use it very seldom, or not at all. At least I beg you not to use it in any way that will cause talk or rouse suspicion. I say again, keep it safe and keep it secret. You are very mysterious. What are you afraid of? I am not certain, so I will say no more. I may be able to tell you something when I come back. I am going off at once, so this is goodbye for the present. He got up at once, cried Frodo. Why, I thought you were staying on for at least a week. I was looking forward to your help. I did mean to, but I have had no change to my, I have, but I have had to change my mind. I may be away for a good while, but I will come, I will come and see you again as soon as I can. Accept me when you see me. I shall sleep in quietly. I shan't often be visiting the Shire openly again. I find that I have become rather unpopular. They say I am a nuisance, and a disturber of the peace. Some people are actually accusing me of spreading Bilbo away, or worse. If you want to know, there is supposed to be a plot between you and me to get hold of his wealth. Some people, exclaimed Frodo. You mean Otho and Lobelia? How abominable. I would give them back and everything else if I could get Bilbo back and go off tramping in the country with him. I love the Shire, but I began to wish somehow that I had gone too. I wonder if I shall ever see him again. So do I, said Gandalf, and I wonder many other things. Goodbye now. Take care of yourself. Look out for me, especially at unlikely times. Goodbye. Frodo saw him to the door. He gave a final wave of his hand and walked off at a surprising pace. But Frodo thought the old wizard looked unusually bent, almost as if he was crying a great weight. Then the evening was closing in, and his cloaked figure quickly vanished into the twilight. Frodo did not see him again for a long time. Now then it's finished. Time.